Hi folks, my name's Vance and I'm from Wilderness Pioneers, and today in our series of primitive skills videos we'll be using the digging stick that we made in our previous video to collect roots and make root cordage. I'm planning on collecting my roots today from western red cedar. They tend to be really good for the project I have in mind. Western red cedar is a tall conical tree and the bark tends to be reddish brown with fibrous plates. The leaves are quite tiny, grow in alternate and opposite pairs, quite glossy and dark green above, whilst underneath they tend to be a bit more paler. Another distinguishing feature for western red cedar is when we crush the leaves they tend to be pineapple scented. Here's another nice one. So all I'm doing is where I find a root, I'm just beginning to follow it down to the end, just loosening the earth and exposing as many as I can. So we've got a few roots here. I think this will do enough for what we need, so I'm just going to use a piece of flint and just cut through. Let's find my sharp edge. There it is. And just cut through with what I need. There's this one, this one, there's another here. That one. Good. So I have some western red cedar roots, just using the digging stick and a piece of flint to cut them, and from this we'll get cordage and we will make, well, do the second stage back at our primitive base camp. So folks, we've done some of the hard work. We've collected our cedar roots using our digging stick, and you saw how effective it can be just breaking up the ground to give us access to these roots. Now comes the second stage where we need to get to the inner root. The roots have a protective outer layer, and when that dries up it becomes quite brittle and doesn't allow us to use the full capabilities of the root itself, particularly as we want to split the root also, so we get double the quantity out of it. Now there's two ways I can do this. One is just use my flint and just spend some time scraping it off. But if I had a large quantity of roots to do, you can imagine this taking a lot of time, particularly as we need to get through and remove this outer layer to expose the main root on the inside. So what I'm going to show you is what I call my root splitting stick, and it just makes the job significantly faster and easier. So to do that I just need a piece of hazel, but any piece of wood will do the job, and what I've got to do is using my flint, and I need a bit more mass behind it, so this one will do the job but it take me significantly longer. I'm going to use my flint and carve a chisel end onto it. So let's get on with that, shall we? There we go. Perfect chisel point. A little bit thin, so it may end up breaking a little bit, but not to worry. I can quite easily resharpen it. So I have my chisel point, and now the next stage is to cut a, split the end of it and cut a little notch that the roots can slip into. And for that, back to my trusty flint, and I'm going to use this not only to split but also to carve that notch out. Notice it's a rocking action. So remember, when you're using flint, just be very, very careful. Well, that's gone deep enough. And now find another sharp edge, and I'm just going to put a little V at the end of it. So that's my stick ready to go. I just need to get it into the ground or hold it between my feet and knees like so, and I can start pulling roots through. We have our splitting stick, and we also have our root. Roots tend to fork, so you need to decide which fork you're going to follow, and I always tend to follow the thicker and longer, and so I'm going to follow this strand and I'm going to cut this off. So using my piece of flint, I'm just going to take that off nice and neatly. And where you have these little side shoots as well, again exactly the same, you can just rip them off, or where you got thicker ones, slightly thicker, and if you want it to stay neat, just give them a little nick with the flint and just take them off. But so a lot of the smaller ones will just come off. And from there, get your stick, put your thumb over the edge, over the top, make sure the root's in, and just start ripping. And you'll notice that the outer bark tends to hold on to there, which is exactly what it should do. It just needs emptying once you go through it. It starts separating the inner from the outer, and they can just be peeled off once they start coming apart, and then just carry on until you get a nice long clean section. And it will eventually just snap off where it gets too thin. You can take more care if you want the really thin stuff, but for what I'm doing, this is perfect. Grasp it from the thick end, put your thumb on top and scrape through. Our next job is to split this in half so we get double the length of cordage from it. I'm going to revert back to using the flint, and I'm just going to cut it and start the split halfway. Like so. And then we're going to rip this in half. Where you get bits like this where the cut or the split is ripping off to one side, then you bend the thicker side to bring it back into the middle and carry on the split. Okay, so we've got our split started, and now what we do, we just take it all the way down to the end, keeping an eye on which way the split's going and just guiding it so it stays in the center for the entire length. That way we get the most efficient use out of the root. And you'll come to difficult points where you've had other roots join in that you've cut off. Just pay them a bit more attention, take your time getting past them, guide that through. You see it's gone off, so I'm going to bend the bigger bit, take it back into the middle, right to the end. And where we had one root, we now end up with two. If your root is that much thicker, you can go into quarters and further split still, depending on how thick that root is and how thin you want it. And these are the perfect size for me to use as lashings on our shelter project, which is coming up. The advantage of root cordage is that we can collect it whenever we come across an abundant resource. Once we've collected it and processed it to this sort of stage, we can leave it to dry and then soak it and rehydrate it when we're ready to use it again. For example, in our upcoming shelter building project, where we will be using root cordage for some of the lashings. So all I'll do is soak it either in a local stream, the pond over there, in a container, and once it's pliable, just go ahead and use it as it is now, nice and pliable in its fresh state. So there you have it, folks, another video on primitive skills. If you enjoyed it, it'd be brilliant if you gave us a thumbs up, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe and keep an eye out for future videos. Also in the description below are links to all our other social media channels. Please do follow us, it would be brilliant to share our adventure with you. And until next time, take care.